Yeah, welcome to this week's EMBN Show. I am home from my trip to America, which was great. I'm in my garage, as you may see. Steve is off on holiday. So I thought I'd do it at home before I pass out from jet lag. But I had a great time at CRT. You may have seen those tech videos on the channel, some super interesting bikes coming out of there. But I also flew east to North Carolina to visit the Industry 9 factory in Asheville, which was really cool. And it was amazing to see. I've heard of Asheville for a lot of reasons. I know Cane Creek is based there as well. And there's a really big mountain bike scene. So I had a bit of a travel around. I only had a day and a half there. So I saw the factory, saw some amazing things being made there. It was cool. You know, I've been lucky enough to visit a few HQs and factories over the years, places like Schwalbe recently, and I've been to Canyon in the past. But it was definitely a different flavour in the US. There was people riding their skateboards around the factory floor and building wheels, listening to some heavy metal. And lots of people had dogs as well, which I thought was really interesting to see people working on the machines with their dogs sat in their bed underneath. A really cool place, and you'll see that video coming on the channel in a couple of weeks actually, where I took a look at, basically I went around the machine shop as well, where they build everything for their brand new Hydra 2 hubs. It's really cool to see the upgrades they've made to that hub and exactly how they make it as well. But I thought from my trip, I know I've been going on about it, you've probably seen it on the channel quite a lot, but it got me thinking about a few bike launches I've seen recently with non-removable 600 watt hour batteries. And I wondered if that's what people actually want. I actually think that might suit me for my type of riding, but is that the bike that people are going to choose to buy? Particularly on bikes that are being branded as shuttle bikes, downhill bikes, because we saw that with that Santa Cruz Bullit that came last week. 170 mil of travel, which granted is kind of enduro more than downhill, but Santa Cruz say it's the downhill bike with a built-in chairlift, which I love the idea of. You know, I do like to do that style of riding. Transition Regulator was another bike. They say it's an all-mountain steed, 150 mil of travel. So okay, that bike being all-mounted might suit many people with a 600 watt hour non-removable battery. But I saw at Ciota the RE Timp Peak. Sounds a bit like the British astronaut Tim Peake. Anyway, it was a Ciota, and that's 170 mil of travel, so big bike, but that's got an 800 watt hour battery. So that's probably what I would think is going to be more popular. That style of bike, that amount of travel, you know, slack. I think that Santa Cruz Bullit is 63, so head angle, so it's way in there with like a modern enduro downhill bike. But that Tim Peake has the 800 watt hour battery. So I literally, I know I was saying this a few weeks ago, that 600 watt hours might be enough for me, you know, because often my rides are relatively short in time and elevation. And most of that is because of where I live. Most of the hills where I live and ride, they're like 300 meters, 400 meters tops, but probably more like a couple hundred meters of elevation. And I kind of work my way around the hill doing downhill runs. So I do quite a lot of climbing, but sort of traversing and downhill. And actually 1,000 meters is probably about normal for most of my rides, and I can do that on full power. But I do wonder if most users are still going to want the bigger battery. If we're talking about Bosch bikes, that is obviously that 800 watt hour. So does that exclude these new bikes like the Santa Cruz Bullit from some people's lists of potential bikes in the future? Definitely want to hear your opinions. I know I've talked about this a little bit, but it kind of surprises me, particularly, like I said, with the big travel bikes, not really having access to the bigger batteries. I know you can shell out the extra and get the 250 watt hour range extender, but would you rather have it built in and be able to use it all the time? Let me know, because it feels to me like that bike particularly isn't built for someone to ride on eco, going out all down an epic ride. You know, they're really selling this. And I know some people go for more travel than maybe they necessarily need. It's nice to have it and not necessarily need it all the time, but have a bigger bike. But yeah, definitely get involved in the conversation and tell me what you think about these long travel bikes with the relatively small batteries. Anyway, let's head back a couple of days and go back to me in North Carolina, where I was checking out a place that people specifically recommended was really good for e-bikes. So right, it's after Ciota. We've flown from California eastwards over to North Carolina because we're here to visit the Industry 9 factory, which is super cool. So this is Asheville. It's a really big hub for mountain biking. There's also Cane Creek base just down the road, but also there's loads of places to ride around here. There's Pisgah Forest, loads of big bike shops. There's a really big mountain bike scene here, but we thought we'd check out the rest of it whilst we're here. And it's been recommended for us to come and see Donoghue Bike Park, because it's pretty much the only place around here that embraces e-bikes and actually lets you ride. Right, there's 13 trails here. There's about 500 feet of elevation, ranging from green all the way up to black and proper freeride stuff as well, and a skills park. So let's take a look around. We spoke to the owner, who said it's about 50-50 when it comes to mountain bikes and e-bikes, but a lot of people will ride their mountain bikes in the morning, get tired of doing the climbs, and then hire an e-bike in the afternoon. But if you want to rent an e-bike for the full day, it's $150 with your pass for riding and the e-bike as well thrown in. It's open 10 till 5, 7 days a week, but you did say that Saturdays often sell out. But you can normally show up in the week and just rent a bike. The climb, like I said, it's about 500 meters. Regular bike takes about 25 minutes, but on e-bike it takes you 10 minutes, get around 5 laps in the hour. In the news this week, there is a new camo collection from Bluegrass. They're offering their Vanguard, Legit, Rogue and Jetro helmets, all in this super cool camo paint job. If you like that sort of thing, head over and check that out. Also some new protection shorts, which I did get to see at Sea Otter, but didn't make the video actually. So there's a new Aura shorts. They've got protection on the hips with a padded liner for comfort as well. Both of these shorts are level 1 protection, by the way, so they're light and breathable, with mesh paneling and 4-way stretch to be worn under mountain bike shorts or trousers. Then there's the Arto shorts, which are like a step up. They've got full coverage from hip to thigh for downhill BMX enduro, and of course they'll suit e-bike as well. Bigger protection than the Aura, but without the padded chamois. So definitely kind of maybe for the more downhill riders that don't want the padded chamois, they'd rather sit directly on the seat. But again, they're flexible, quick drying, and they have that hip, thigh and tailbone padding. And they're available from small up to XL. If, like me, you've fallen off and give yourself some big bruises and welts on your sides and your hips, I actually ride in shorts just like this all the time now, so I'll be looking to get a set of these. Right, cool places this week, checking out the places you've been riding. This first one is from Anders Sundvissen, and this is in Sweden, I believe. After work ride close to the village of Hallsberg on a Trek Rail X9, should say, XT build 2021. Look at that, frozen lake still. It's freezing back in the UK, actually. Gone from the 27 degrees in North Carolina back to freezing. It's funny, I flew over and wondered what all the Americans on the plane were expecting when they got to the UK, because it's sunny, but it's cold. Next up, Shippy has pressed buy it almost 5 years ago, actually, on this Focus Jam Squared, and this nursed me through long COVID and out the other side. I owe this bike, that's good to hear. This is the Methalithic Tomb at the Gap Bike Park, one of Dublin's many superb trail centres. Nice, I've actually never ridden around Dublin, so from the look of that, it looks like a really cool spot to go and ride. Thanks Shippy for sending stuff in. On to the feedback. Actually, I sort of picked up on some of the comments from those Sea Otter Tech videos that I did. Mark K8485 says the Uno Myth is probably the best looking bike I've seen in years, which is something I heard a lot, but I've got to say, particularly Unos, I find that they are quite polarising. People either love them or they hate them. They've got quite a big sort of seat tower on them. I actually really like the look of them, and it looks great up close. Looks like a really nice bike, proper premium. But anyway, Dead Elvis 66 says, on that note, the Uno looks lovely apart from their top tube that makes their bike look like a step over lady's bike. Which, I know what you mean, that's why I guess they have that big seat tower, is the top tube is so dropped. But when you get up close to it, the carbon weave in that bike, I definitely wouldn't want a painted version. I think it looks amazing, and I know they're expensive, but they look expensive. So yeah, they do split people's opinions, I think. A comment from any news on when the latest Bosch motor will update that torque to 100 Newton meters? Now, I don't know official news, and I don't know that it's 100 Newton meters, but I've got to say there's a lot of rumours gathering on the ground that it's going to be around the start of May. So keep your eyes peeled. That's literally, less than a couple of weeks away. So I'm hearing lots of rumours they're building on that, but I don't know for sure, I've got to say. But very soon, I think. Jojo Aspie 7398 says, winds have changed here in the US. So I guess I talked a bit about it in the last show about how it's grown at Sea Otter. And Jojo says, I've not seen or talked to some of my riding buddies since I moved. And these people, from what I remember, weren't particularly fans of e-bikes. But when I got the chance to join them on a ride, they're actually in the market for getting one. Only thing that is stopping them is the cost. At the same time, the pressure to get one soon is also there before prices could possibly spike up due to, well, you guys know. Yeah, interesting stuff. I talked with Owen actually over on the GMBN Tech Show that it wasn't really a big topic, the big T word, the tariffs, because people didn't really know what was going on. So even in the industry, there wasn't a huge amount of chat about it. So yeah, we'll see. But I guess I wonder about, in the UK, there's a fairly sort of mature second-hand market now for e-bikes. And maybe, there probably is in the US, but, if the popularity isn't quite as high as the UK or Europe, should we say, that maybe there isn't a cheaper way of getting into e-bikes at the moment over there. But I'm sure as the market gets bigger and matures a bit, that they'll start popping up as well. So there are cheap bikes out there. Actually, I took a look at those Salsas and they were pretty reasonably priced, I've got to say. And they all had the Gen 5 motor, and they were really tunable. You could change out the shock if you wanted to go from, I think it was 160 up to 180 mil travel in the rear of those. So there are some relatively well-priced bikes out there, I've got to say. Right, over to the bike vault. Start with big man riding. The big yellow thing in the sky is back. Yeah, it's been mega sunny in the UK for about a month, except for a couple of days of rain just recently. But yeah, big man has been out enjoying an early Saturday ride with substantial riders. Is that a riding group? Before the sun runs away again. Yeah, looks nice. What is that? It's a Marin. I've got to learn how to say it properly. Actually, I visited the Marin Museum of Bicycling, which is really interesting, before I went down to Seattle. So that is just north of San Francisco, a place called Fairfax, and it's home of Repack, where the Californians, Gary Fisher included, started riding and making mountain bikes back in the 70s, was it late 70s? So it's funny, you drive around there, it's well worth a visit, but you'll see loads of names like Muirwoods and all these names people of my age will probably remember as being older Marin bike names back in the day. Loads of them out there. Super nice. Graham Soyland has been riding an Amflo. So this is out in the Aussie bush, 2025 Amflo PL Pro. Awaba, Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. Looks amazing. God, that's super nice. Love the gold. Is that a gold stem? I can't see what it is. Maybe Renthal, not sure. Obviously loads of Kashima on that bike and gold bar and stem. Looks like a super cool setup. Next to Las Vegas, this is John riding a Trek Rail 7 at Bears Best. I don't see any bears around there, but that looks cool. Looks epic around there. I know it's super dry. I've ridden a little bit around there. There's a lot of elevation, I think, as well, isn't there? The further you get away from the city, I think. But looks like a super nice setup to me. Very cool. Another Trek. They're popular this week. Charlie Hammond is riding a Rail 9.8 XT, size XL. Riding trails near Arundel Castle, DT Swiss HX rims, rolling on Hope Pro to Pro 5 hubs, should I say? Getting it all wrong. I'm getting tired. With Pirelli Scorpion eMTB S tyres, Hope cranks, pedals and stems. That's cool. Loads of Hope upgrades. I actually spoke to the Hope Technology guys out at Seattle, and they were saying they're selling a lot of their brakes. They Tech 4s, I believe. And shorter cranks, they do those alloy cranks. They reckon they're selling lots of those to e-bikes. So it's cool. There's lots of sort of aftermarket parts. And yeah, I like it. Super nice, got to be. We've got another one. This is a Trek / Plus this time. This is local to me. Up the Wrekin, Ash Nichols, out. It's good riding up there. It's one of those places, I think I've said this before, but the Wrekin in Shropshire, where I live, it's like a really severe climb up. So, I've ridden mountain bikes for a long time now, but actually riding up there before I had an e-bike was super hard. I reckon I did it a couple of times, but now I've got an e-bike. There's some really steep downhill tracks offside of there, and obviously you can lap it on an e-bike. I did a video on my Canyon Talk up there, doing exactly that. I think I do 1,500 meters. It's not very long actually, because it's so steep. I think it's about 400 or 500 meters up and down. So yeah, a few laps there. You're getting the meters in. Finishing on Ronnie Shacklet riding, or was it Specialized Levo, riding in North Georgia. at Jake Mountain and in Donoghue, Georgia. Cool, I wasn't actually so far from where I was. I was actually driving from Charlotte in North Carolina over to Asheville, listening to the Masters, the golf. I'm not a massive golf fan, but I was listening to that, and it was amazing to hear. That was just down south in Augusta, so that's Georgia. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm not a massive golfer, but I thought it was really cool to listen to. And it looks like there's also good mountain biking in Georgia, which is cool to see. Ronnie's riding a 2024 Specialized Turbo Evo comp, 53 years old, love all bikes, but really digging the e-bike on the long ride. Cheers. Nice one, Ronnie, thanks for sending it in. And that's got to be super nice because I like the look of it and I'd love to visit and ride there as well. Getting social this week. This is from a couple of weeks ago, but I saw this Hans Ray's prototype GT e-bike that was painted by Troy Lee himself, of Troy Lee Designs fame, of course. Really cool looking bike. I love the colours on this. And actually I caught up with Hans at Sea Otter and sort of got chatting. I know GT bikes, it's a legendary bike brand that I absolutely lusted over GT performers and fuelers back in the BMXs. A really cool brand from the 90s, and at the moment it's paused. They don't know what's quite going on with the bike brand. It sounded a bit more positive from what Hans was saying to me, and he's still being supported by GT, as is Win Masters. So I'm really hopeful that the GT will remain and come back and actually start producing these prototype e-bikes, because it's a really great looking bike, even if it doesn't come standard with a Troy Lee paint design. Super cool. And then I'm heading over Joel Anderson, friend of the show, a friend of, I've filmed with him a couple of times, really cool rider, absolutely amazing rider from the UK. And he has been enjoying his Specialized Levo 4. Check out what he's been doing on that bike, including one of the best stoppies, nose manuals I've ever seen. So loving that. Right, that's it for this week's EMBN Show. Get involved. I'd love to hear your comments on that longer travel shuttle bikes that are being sold with 600 watt batteries. Do you think that suits you, or do you think that plus a range extender is perfectly fine, or would you rather the option, should I say, of buying a bigger battery? And definitely send in your bike vaults and your cool places to ride. There's loads. I look at all of them. Thank you very much for sending them in. There's some amazing bikes. So I've got a nice little backlog set up for future shows, but keep sending them in. Love to see them. Coming up on the channel the rest of the week, actually, I've been talking about the best eMTB tech. So smartwatches, computers, things like that. Things that can help you find trails, not get lost, record your rides, do your Strava recording, all that stuff coming up later in the week. Thank you very much for watching this week's EMBN Show from the garage. I'll be back with Steve next week, hopefully. See you later.